were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Private first class of the Collins Foundation. I'm not retired. I don't get any introductions like that. But thank you all for being here today. This is a really special day for all of us here to be remembering the homecoming of these great Americans and to be sharing this with the public for many years to come. The Collins Foundation was actually started back in 1977 by my parents, Bob and Caroline Collins, and it was in order to preserve living history events. And the foundation has gone through many transformations over the years, and some things we could never have dreamt about back then, especially for me back then, because I was only 3 years old. But we've had this amazing opportunity to honor, and for me personally, to get to know so many great American veterans. We've done it through the Wings of Freedom Tour, having a B-17 and B-24, B-25 and Mustang fly around the country for 30 years to tell the story of American air power during World War II. In the 90s, we felt that there was something important missing, and that was to honor the Vietnam era veterans. And that meant we acquired an F-4 Phantom through a congressional bill. We started operating that aircraft to honor all of those who served in Vietnam, and later added an A-4 Skyhawk and a very special F-100 Super Sabre. And I say it's a very special airplane because all of the POWs here know the story of Bud Day. They all were with him, and he is the most decorated American since Douglas MacArthur, having both the Medal of Honor and the Air Force Cross, and an incredible POW and an incredible gentleman. And so I was honored one day to meet Bud. Just under circumstance, I looked out, I was in the cockpit of a Mustang getting ready for a flight, and I looked out and there's this gentleman there, and he has this little blue necklace on his shirt with the Medal of Honor. And I jump out and I say, Colonel Day, it's an honor to meet you. Do you want to go for a Mustang flight? We can go right now. And he couldn't, he had a place to be. But he started telling me these stories of his life, and it was truly inspiring. At that point, I called one of our directors up. I said, there's an F-100 for sale. I think we should try to do something. We should get this airplane. We should paint it up in Bud's markings and fly it, and fly him in it one more time. And the response was, go get it. And so we did. And it was through some of his Misty brothers and POWs that we got more information on the markings of his airplane, and painted it up in his markings, and then had him come to Houston to fly in the aircraft. And that was a really amazing experience, to have him climbing up that ladder again. And you guys knew Bud. He was physically challenged from his time in the Hanoi Hilton. And he went up and down that ladder like a squirrel all day long. You would have had no idea there was anything wrong. And so through that friendship with Bud, I got to know a few other POWs. Leo Thorsness, a Medal of Honor recipient, Joe Jackson, who was a Medal of Honor recipient, and Orson and I were at an Air Force Association convention. And Orson, I won't bring up that you were there because you're a proud Marine. You obviously wouldn't have been at an Air Force Association convention, but that was a very special night for me, getting to know these guys and getting to hear their stories. And Fred Lewis, who was with me at the time, unfortunately he's not with us anymore, he said, buddy, we need to go back to the hotel room and we need to go into the bathroom and lock ourselves in there for 5 years together. And then we'll start to understand the bond that these guys have for one another. And that's absolutely true. We cannot even begin to imagine the bonds and what they endured. But we felt it was important to do that. So Eric mentioned this has been a 2-year project. This project of the Hanoi Hilton is a project that's been going on since about 1995. The cells have taken this long journey from Hanoi to here, and it was through the vision of a gentleman by the name of Jeet Mahal, who went to Vietnam as a Canadian citizen when Americans couldn't, and negotiated kind of like a release to buy these original cells and bring them to Canada for a while before they came to the U.S. And thankfully, it was just the vision of many different people that helped this process. So Glenn Richards is here. He acquired those cells. They went to Rick Sharp's foundation in Houston, and he said, you guys really need to put this in the American Heritage Museum. And that's how it all got started. And to put it in there, I had a friend who said, well, I was expecting to see a bunch of bricks laid out. I didn't realize what this display would be like. But to tell the story, we had to create something very special and very immersive. And that required an incredible team. And a lot of this team is back here. Ed Shea took on the construction of this. He kind of came out of retirement to general manage that project. Scott Saprari put a tremendous amount of effort. It takes a lot of effort to make something look good. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to make something look this bad. And that's what had to be done. These cells had to be authentic. Bob and his team at BPI, I see Ari and Bob, are you back there? There we are. Boston Productions, Inc. did so much of the design work for this museum and all of the audio-visual. And they were able to take the stories from 6 of these amazing gentlemen and put that in this exhibit, so people can understand firsthand what this was like. And also, it couldn't have been done without Lee Humiston. Is Lee here today? Lee has been involved with the POWs for pretty much since they came home, of keeping their story alive. And he helped us so much with a lot of these original photographs and a lot of the authentic uniforms that are in there. So I want to thank everyone who helped make this possible, and also for all the POWs that had to steer us in the right direction as we went along. There aren't photos of what occurred inside of this. It's only possible through their memories, and it's an honor for us to keep those memories alive. It's also not possible without a lot of other people who are involved with this. So the whole American Heritage Museum team, the docents, and everyone here has been so committed to this project, and especially in our office staff, Ken Miles and Hunter Cheney and Ryan Keogh, to make this possible today. Anything like this has a tremendous price to be paid with it. And fortunately, there has been an incredible leadership position taken by the Lambert Foundation and also PenFed. And I want to thank them for all of their support. PenFed is just a company that I admire greatly because of the commitment they have to our military and to our retired military out there, both in the financial services industry, but what they do for them afterwards. So thank you very much for all that you do. So we're very dedicated to keeping this history alive. We hope everyone can come here and learn more about these sacrifices that these brave men made, the story of their commitment to one another, and how this is a survival story that should inspire all of us. Whenever we're having difficult times, and we think it's a rough day, you look at what that was for them, what a rough day was for them, and they were there all for one another. So I just have one last thing for the POWs to leave them with. Thank you.
including the torture, because I was absolutely top of my game as a fighter pilot, squadron commander, shot down, been tortured, failed my country and myself. I wanted to die.
One of the cruelest punishments for anybody is solitary. It's quiet. Your mind is whirling 24 hours a day. It never stops. I had a cement slab in a little narrow room in a waste bucket, and they just threw me on that cement slab and left me. They'll live or die. You hear the honking of the horns in the city, and maybe chatter over the wall, but this the deadly quiet. Hear the guards talking. That was it. Just quiet except for the guards talking, because if they heard you make a sound outside of your cell, they'd come in and beat you up.
That indeed was their philosophy, to separate the prisoners, put a lot of guards on us so we wouldn't talk to each other, and therefore become more manipulative into their propaganda.
There was one sound that could drive fear through the heart of every POW. It was unspoken, you didn't have to describe it. It was the sound of keys jangling from the turnkey in the middle of the night.
Every time a damn guard would walk down a cell block and rattle his keys, 8 or 10 cells break out in sweat.
Somebody is going to be dragged out and tortured, and you don't know if it's going to be you.
One morning I got up, I stopped my foot, and I said, I've got to dig deep into my soul somewhere, and I've got to find the strength and the courage to handle this. If I do everything humanly possible, someday I will go home.
Days went by, and a delirium went by. I was in and out of fog. And then, guess what I heard? I hear this. Shave and a haircut. And on the wall next door.
It might be a Vietnamese on the other side of the wall, and so our authentication code was shave and a haircut.
The Vietnamese can't make that rhythm. They don't know that rhythm.
If the response was 2 bits, and, then we knew it was an American and not a Vietnamese on the other side.
So I reached around my head and I tap back, tap, tap. And I'm laying there, holding my arm, and I hear this, Mike McGrath, there is a code. They arrange the alphabet in 5 groups of 5. Leave out the letter K. And tap once for the first group and then tap the letter. So I became a communicator, thanks to Smitty Harris and the others who developed the communication system.
You got that code to a new guy, regardless of what it took. If you got caught doing it, that was part of the chastity thing. But everybody got that tap code one way or another.
But you had the tap code talking through the cup, and between buildings we used to get commute code. So there were a number of different ways of communicating.
Communication is really the key to our survival.
There were times after gross mistreatment that I would be down, but the first thing I would hear when the guards got away was, God bless you. So we supported each other, and that was very important to our morale and well-being. And so that was our mode of communication for the next 7 or 8 years, was tapping through these thick walls so that we could communicate and refute the propaganda that was being broadcast over loudspeakers to us.
It seems to me that most of you are fully informed on the building of the wall.
Hanoi would come on the radio every day, had to listen to it. They had loudspeakers going in the camp. They just blasted that stuff over the radio with Oriented war songs and crap like that.
I was only there 6 or 7 days ago.
From that point on, it was just a long healing process. You just lay there in pain, you're solitary, you're not getting any medical help, and you just have to wait it out.
To see your life pass you by, just sitting here with nothing to do, nothing to write, nothing but just time.
You had to do something in your mind, so people come up with innovative ideas.
I got interested in the moon, the cycles of the moon. If I knew the date and went out and looked at the moon, I could tell you what time it was.
As we got more sophisticated, we attended the Hanoi University. Basically, Hanoi University is you suck all the knowledge out of your roommate's head. If it's in physics or astronomy or languages, whatever he has, you suck it out of it and you memorize it because you're never going to see a book or paper or pencil.
So everybody, I'm sure, have their own escape mechanisms.
You did a really wonderful job. This whole thing is quite magnificent.
November 20th, 1970, when the Sante Raiders came from Thailand and raided Sante to rescue American POWs. And it turned out no POWs were there.
The North Vietnamese panicked. If we could do it at Sante, we could do it in other camps.
Within 3 days, all of the outlying camps, we were all moved from the outlying camps back into
I never went
Hanoi
back.
Hilton.
A lot of the guys made trips back to Vietnam.
When the B-52 started bombing, we knew something was afoot.
There were meetings between the Vietnamese government and the U.S. government in Paris.
The camp commander handed every POW in our cell group a list of the rules of the ending of the war, the negotiation. All he says is the war is over and you will be going home soon.
And so we marched on out and the buses took us to DLA Airport.
That 141 breaks out of that overcast, and that's when I got the tears in my eyes and I said, I kind of opened
We were always joking back. And people would listen to us.
We go on the airplane and it's pretty damn quiet. People are talking, but nothing, no real excitement at all on the airplane. The airplane fires up in taxis. When the wheels left them down, everybody started jumping up and hugging and
We all started stamping our feet, and it was just a wonderful event.
boy, that was nice.
It was me leading over return with honor.
Not necessarily these guys.
I booked the rooms. I said, in these weeks, okay, we'll take that. And I said, by Hill. I said, oh, wait a minute.
I've been there before, I don't need to go there.
They had agreements of instead of
Well,
us
I
taking
think we're all
everybody
on
else,
board.
so
Yeah,
one plane
take
would
them
come
into
in
Washington.
just to go, and then they would come back and they sit down. And generally as a POW, the ones that were there the longest were the ones that come out first, and they make arrangements to come back in and pick up another one.
Yeah.
And that was a great inspiration to me.
And we didn't see each other for 6 years thereafter.
That's right. We knew a lot about each other, but we didn't know what we looked like.
So along that line, how Bob was helping you out, how were you helping one another out while you were in there? What were the different methods? Because each one of you had the worst day of your life while you were there, or many of those horrible days. But you were there somehow to pick one another up. How did you go about doing that?
Well, we just tried to help each other, and the fellow that lived next door to me for about 3 years in Alcatraz, and I would have breakfast together every Sunday morning. Of course, this was in our minds alone. I would serve him Canadian bacon and eggs Rockefeller, but and unfortunately he died over there. But I'd be the host one Sunday and he'd be the host the next Sunday. And Robbie might be interested to to know how they named the Hanoi Hilton. And it came about because after I'd been there about 3 months, I had a little wormhole through my wooden door, and I'd man that wormhole for about 6 hours a day because it could see part of the courtyard. And along came another American, and so later on I left him a note in the dream, and that he picked it up. And I was just trying to cheer the guy up by saying, "Welcome to the Hanoi Hilton." And that's the start of our communication system. That's how it got named.
The first 6 or 8 months I was there, I was in solitary confinement. And as far as I knew, nobody knew I was there, except my family, of course, and the Air Force that missed me. But one of the first things we did was to start tapping. Actually, the first time I started tapping was to a man in an adjacent cell named Norm McDaniels. And I didn't know the tap code. So it was 1 tap for A, 2 taps for B, 3 taps for C, all the way to 26 taps. And using that system, I got his name, Norm McDaniels. He was a P-66 electronic warfare officer, and he got my name and my background, 105s, out of Tockley. While we were doing this, there was a man in a catty corner cell named Dave Hatcher, and he knew the code. And he was just shaking his head over there, listening to us tap 1 tap for A and 2 taps for B. So he called me up on the wall one night using the 1 tap for A, 2 taps for B. He says, "I teach you code. Code easy way to talk." And he taught me the code, and I taught it to Norm McDaniels. And that's how I got into the system.
What you're hearing here is our key was communication, whether it's sign language, you know, A, B, C, between camps with tap codes. Communication was our key, and we basically turned into Hanoi University. If you had a roommate, you sucked out every bit of knowledge he had and you memorized it. And that was important. Now, I had a German-speaking roommate, so for 2 years I learned German. I'd never seen a book. And then there was an escape and some torture and split up, and then I ended up with a roommate that spoke Spanish. So for the next 4 years, I went to Hanoi University speaking Spanish. I became fluent. I went later to Ecuador and served 3 years in Ecuador as a naval attaché speaking Hanoi University Spanish. So in other words, we shared, we supported each other, and that's my answer is communication.
Absolutely, it was vital. It was life-saving, and we did everything we possibly could. We found out that most of our guards had tuberculosis, and they were always coughing and spitting, and we couldn't whisper a word, but we could cough and spit. And so we decided to develop a code using various letters of the alphabet or abbreviations to be represented by combinations of coughs, sneezes, spits, or wheezes. So you wake up in the morning, here's a guy, the guy's like going, that means, "Good morning, how are you?" But we supported each other by great revelations, you know, and we'd have parties. We had parties for Christmas, of course, and New Year's, and birthdays especially. And our birthday parties were really special. You know, we had marching bands, and we had huge birthday cakes for the Navy guys. It was usually an aircraft carrier. And out of the aircraft carrier was popping naked girls. And it was all in our minds, and it was all just mental manipulation.
So humor was a huge part of survival, it sounds like. How did you sometimes weave that into the interrogations? Did you play games with your interrogators?
Well, you had to, and you had to remember the lies and stories you told them. And so one story I told them was they wanted to know what my role was on the aircraft carrier Coral Sea. And I told them that I was in charge of all the pool tables. And for those in the audience who don't know, there are no pool tables on it.